I listed a few questions. So there's going to be an introduction, then the main part,
Okay.
and the conclusion, of course. The introduction I had in mind that we would start with about your background, and I don't want you to, to tell me anything about your childhood. It's just that your background that led you to create the MOOC.
Okay.
Is sort of an explanation as to what made you, your motivation. If you have any specific reason, I kind of understood there was one, and also why now, like in time, why you decided now to have that one
Yeah.
started, and because you said so yourself, well, you wrote about it. You were not discouraged about the result because obviously you decided that there would be a second and maybe a third session or third season. So let's start with, the background, like I said, and about yourself.
Okay. I mean, there's many, I guess, different routes to it. The very initial route would be that since kind of 2004, 2005, I've been using Moodle as an online platform within school. Very like fundamental in the development of it at my school in terms of like leading courses. And that kind of just started to get me into like educational technology really. And as that went on, I got into other tools like blogging. So I've written several blogs over my time. I have a personal blog, but I've blogged in school since 2006. I'm a head of media at the school, and we have a department blog, and we share resources with the students. And just so we've used Moodle, but I was using blogging as more like an instant way of sharing information, and hooked it up with Twitter, so the students can like link up to updates and get information. So part of it stems from that kind of process that I've always been interested in online learning, and to an extent for quite a while, blended learning. So using it both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And that led to other experiments. So I've done experiments with Twitter inside and outside the classroom. A-level students, we've had discussions about topics in media. I've had media lecturers from university kind of beam into my lessons, and we've used Twitter as a back channel to ask them questions and things like that. And then Moodle was just kind of part of where my thinking has gone with online learning, is that I became very interested in like the opportunity to offer courses to students that we can't offer in school during like regular school hours. Maybe it's a case that we don't quite have the expertise, or maybe it's a case that it's just something we'd love to fit in but we can't because of time constraint. So that's been an interest of mine for like 2 or 3 years now. Just over 2 years ago, I started taking an MA in education, and it's been great. It's been very open, and although there were some assigned modules, assessment for learning, I had to do a school-based inquiry, I was very much able to kind of channel and focus on my interests. So I did a module on e-learning. In the AFL module, I looked at Google Docs as a tool to like formatively assess students' work, to do peer assessment and things like that. So a lot of this just seemed to come together. And then in last year, we had a module on independent learning, and it's always been a passion of mine. I've always been somebody that doesn't really believe in spoon-feeding students. I really want them to kind of learn and grow for themselves. So coming off the back of that unit, it felt like a perfect opportunity to develop that for my dissertation. And so I kind of had a plan, and it was very much in the let's do an online course. My initial idea was I was going to run it 3 times. And the first time I was going to do in-class teaching with online like assessment, but I've been doing that for a while. So in discussion with my dissertation tutor, we kind of thought that that was something that I've already done, so what was the worth in me doing it? I was very good at that model already. It's kind of how I run a lot of my day-to-day teaching, so I'll teach a bit in class, and then there are resources online, go and access them, send me your work via email or Google Docs, and very into that open platform, very into bring your own device, and just because I think I have those tech skills, so it doesn't really matter how the students send work to me to an extent. I'll push it into something that works for me, and I'll edit it and do what I need to do with it. So in conversation, we decided that it might be better just to do two versions of the course. One that's a little bit more teacher-led, so it had like the live lecture, for example, element, which was kind of defining for all the participants. This is the start of the week. You need to turn up and watch the beginning of that week's topic and things like that. And in the second version, it's going to be far less led by me. So the material is going to be preemptively up online. It'll be up to the participants to like watch and read and kind of work their way through the course in their own volition. And then the only thing that will be kind of dictated will be the Twitter discussions to develop that collaboration. And as you know from one or two things I've written, that's kind of an area that I thought the first version of the course fell down, because that was one of my initial intentions, was to get into that kind of connectivist, collaborative kind of model of a MOOC. As I was planning this whole project, I spent the summer, this past summer, out in the States. My wife is American, and we went out to visit family. And MOOC, the first version of MOOC ran, and I just thought it was perfect. It was a week long. We were out there spending time with family, but I knew that I could kind of get in and just do a little bit of work each day and find out a bit more about what MOOCs were, because I've been following things like DS 106 for quite some time, which is a fantastic MOOC. I know they call themselves not a MOOC, but a kind of MOOC-ish like kind of thing, and I like the idea of collaborating and creating work online. So I took MOOC, and it just kind of clarified for me a kind of model, a structure of how a course like this could work. And then my interest, obviously, as a high school teacher, was would it work for high school students? Because all my experiences of looking at MOOCs, following along and then participating in one has been at the higher education kind of level. So I thought, what better thing to do than to try it? So I went back to my dissertation proposal and just restructured the courses slightly to try and include more of the MOOC elements into it. And then that's what ended up being Crit 101, essentially. It was kind of built from that. I submitted my proposal in September, and then I had some time to put the course together and get everything kind of up and running, and now I'm kind of in the middle of my data collection, as it were. Course 1 down, course 2 is ready to go next week.
Okay. So there won't be any third season, right?
There might be I hope, in terms of just, I would like to carry on and offer it as a course to students. In terms of my dissertation, I'm collecting data from two slightly different versions of the course, and I'll be comparing which version works most effectively, why, and then obviously making proposals for further research, and I would make further tweaks if necessary to what might become a more permanent course that we can offer from within the school. Loads still to investigate, really. I mean, the whole badges thing is something that I kind of threw in there because I was just kind of interested in it. But I mean, there's problems technically because the module that I install on WordPress isn't quite working the way I'd like it to. And just the idea of badges for some of the kids, they didn't even want them, which was really interesting because they just wanted to do the course. So I mean, and that raises a whole thing. I'm very much into like the idea of intrinsic motivation. I'm not much of a fan of external motivation, but I do think there is a place for recognition of skills sometimes that aren't always acknowledged in the mainstream curriculum. We are still very content-driven in our curriculum at times, and I'm a big fan of skill. So I thought the badges were interesting in being a way to recognize those skills, but I'm not fully convinced yet. That's something I'm still trying to kind of figure out myself.
Okay, so you were talking about the badge that you sort of threw in. I wanted you to tell more about the preparation of the MOOC itself.
Okay.
When it all started, then what you considered, what you rejected, what you kept to finally get the formula we had. And so the badges, did I understand correctly that they sort of were something that you wanted to try, are still not convinced about, etc.?
It was one of those things of being, I've kind of been on Twitter since 2009, and it's had quite an impact on my learning. I'm very good friends with Doug Belshaw, and he's kind of has a role at Mozilla, and he's advocating badges, and so we've talked a lot, and I do see potential in their use. And it's a case of like it's several things all kind of bubbling up at once. So MOOCs are on like everybody's radar at the moment, it seems, and badges are on people's radar. So I just want to try and bring those things together. It was part of that thing about me at that point. When I was putting the course together, one of my considerations was how do I get people to sign up? So, 14, 15, 17, 18-year-old kids who have got full timetables, and I'm going to say, come and do more. Do I need a carrot to like kind of get them there? Now, it turns out that for a lot of them, I didn't need it, as it were, but I wanted to have something for, at least for those students who are motivated by that sort of thing, that there was something visual they could see that they would get out of it.
Okay.
In terms of building the course from scratch, I guess my initial thoughts on it were I wanted to move away from in-class teaching, and I wanted to see, and it does make a few people roll their eyes when I say this, but I'm very interested in putting myself out of a job as a classroom teacher. So part of the motivation and my thoughts about building it stemmed from that idea. So I wanted to put the course together in such a way that it could be self-sufficient to an extent, that once the content was there, it really was down to the students to kind of participate, interact, choose what they wanted to really get on with and go and do it. And it's really about them and their learning, not about what I'm doing as the expert in the room, metaphorically. So in putting that together, I knew that in terms of my planning for it, I needed to kind of really think through what skills. And when I was doing some further research, a lot of material came up in my reading about there being a kind of gap between students who leave school at 18 and the expectations of university professors, and that some students were arriving not really, even in some cases, not having the skills that they needed to be able to engage in undergraduate study fully. So that's where kind of like the research, the validity and reliability, because that really isn't taught that well in high schools. Something that I didn't really know a lot about until I did my MA, if I'm really completely honest. But I think it's really useful, and from some of the feedback, some of the participants found that part of the unit really useful in their lessons already. Even though it's not being explicitly taught, it's helped them in science, it's helped them in history. So that was part of it. So once I had a body of skills, the other thing that I wanted to connect it to was independent learning. And from the module I did on independent learning, I came to a conclusion from various different parts of the research, from some research I did in class with my students, but also from the reading, that independent learning is not just about attributes. So it is about motivation, it is about autonomy, it is about organization. But it also came out from my research that it was about knowing how to go and do research, about knowing how to write on your own without guidance and things like that. So the conclusion I came to was that independent learning is about attributes and skills. So that gave me a body for the course then. So the course is going to be partly about skills that could feed into you becoming a more effective independent learner. So that was me thinking through the content of the course. And then my next thing was to figure out how do I deliver that in terms of how do I put the content out there, what form should it take, and what sort of activities should I put together, and how could the learning be evidenced. From engaging in MOOC, what I liked the most was the idea of very, to an extent, very free-form use of tools. We use a different tool almost every day to collaborate, to learn and work with. So I tried to embody that within the course. So Google Docs went in there. I was already very well versed in it, but it works great for collaboration, for writing together and things like that. I wanted to put Twitter in there because I'm really, separate from my MA, I've just been massively interested in the last 2 years in using Twitter as a tool with students. And most of that so far has been with A-level students, but it's been fascinating to kind of engage with younger students in that way, in a social environment, and to show that it's okay to do it. Actually, that you can do it in a very controlled and measured and sensible way, but it can benefit them. So those were two things that I knew were going to go into the course. That they were kind of always in the back of my head, and they went straight into my planning. Some of the things that were more challenging were like the final task with the video was something I think can be done really well, but it involves a certain amount of technical expertise. And so I was a little bit reticent to begin with and almost didn't put it in. And then I thought, well, we'll just go for it and see what happens. And in the case of the first run, it was a mixed bag of results, I would say, overall. Those of you that were very focused and dedicated kind of got on and did it. But I think that dropout has been a little bit gradual across the first run of the course, but the biggest dropout came in that week when the task was perhaps the most challenging. So that speaks something about learning and something that I'll unpack in terms of my data analysis. But it is an interesting idea because there are whole courses like DS106 that are built around image editing and video editing. But I think it's about a particular group of people. They've got the time to do it and a set of expertise. So one thing going forward, I think that I'm going to put into the next course, I'm going to add a tools page with just a little bit of with some helpful videos about each tool that we've used, so like how to get started with Google Docs, how to get started with Twitter, because there are a few students, one or two of the students who signed up for the course have never used Twitter before at all. It was completely new to them. And the same for video, how to do some basic video editing, things like that. So I think that's something that could help and support the course, and something that I wish I'd kind of thought through initially. The main principle and in putting the course together that I wanted to get on board with, but it didn't really kind of work out, and I think that I'm as much to blame as anybody for this, is I really wanted it to be collaborative, and not just when I said it was supposed to be collaborative. So the collaboration to even happen where a task was autonomous. So although the task itself had an autonomous outcome, it was my hope or intention that participants would get together and chat and discuss, because that's to me what MOOC was like. So if I wasn't sure about something, there was a forum I could go and ask questions and talk with people with, or I was connected with quite a few people on the course on Twitter, so I could go and talk to them there, but there was always somebody to kind of converse with and test ideas with, and that didn't really happen that well, unless it was a Wednesday evening at a specified time, because everybody knew we were supposed to turn up. And even then, not everybody turned up. So, that's, something that I've kind of had to unpack and kind of deal with from this first one. So what I'm going to try in the next version, and this is an idea that comes from Alan Levine. He writes Cogdog blog, and he's like involved in DS106 and a few other MOOCs and things. Comment groups. So if say I've got about 20 people signed up again, I'm going to put them in groups of 3 or 4 to comment on each other's work. So it's kind of not a daunting task. You haven't got to go and read 19 other people's work, but I am asking you to go and read at least 3 other people's and give some feedback. And I'm hoping that that will foster a bit more dialogue and a bit more connection between participants. Okay. But those were the main principles. So Twitter for discussion, Google Docs very much as a tool for writing and collaboration, working together, doing some planning. Bit of video thrown in there because I wanted to push that skill kind of level within the students, and just fostering collaboration overall. Hopefully going beyond the tools, if they wanted to use a tool that they enjoyed themselves. But that, we tried that a little bit, but it didn't always come to fruition. But those were the main ones.
Okay. What specifically, because you didn't mention anything that you actually would have considered and then rejected, was there any?
What I would really like to do is more of this, but certainly for here.
As much about an idea or a concept as a tool itself. Yeah. See what I mean?
Yes, I would like, and part of the collaboration and conversation, I would have liked for it to be more face-to-face and verbal, but online. And the reason for that being that I think that there is a lot still to be said for face-to-face interaction, that I don't necessarily believe you have to be in the same room, that people do connect with other people when you can see them, really understand how they're feeling in that moment when they're discussing something.
Like we do.
just very difficult to do with 14-year-old kids, really. Not just on the practical level, but on the fact that this is like in the evening, and I'm a 33-year-old guy, and should I really be online with a 14-year-old child talking,
Yeah.
things like that. So the child protection kind of thing. So it's a shame I had to kind of reject that out of necessity. Although I think it's got if it could be done right and done in a very professional manner, I think it could be quite powerful, because I know that some people were fans of the Twitter discussion and some people weren't, but it's very fast and it's very quick, but you are limited by the 140 characters. If we could get it together in, say, groups of 6 and have some nice, very meaningful, for half an hour conversation face to face, I think there would be real development of ideas and learning in that process. I think it would be more, so it'd be more like being in the classroom and having that, more natural group discussion between students, which always fosters, I find, lots of good ideas and helps move the learning forward. So that was one that I kind of had to reject, even though it was something I thought would be a very good idea, pedagogically at least.
Well, actually, we are broaching the main part right now, and I can see that what I wrote, you sort of already mentioned it. What were your expectations? Do you have anything more to say about that, or can we go further in my list of questions?
One of my,
What were your main expectations?
but I don't know if I had that many. I suppose it's kind of hard. I did have expectations and I didn't. So the way I set the course up, and certainly my research as an MA student, was set up more as a question. So I was very interested. I personally think that this model of learning, perhaps for the right students who are interested, can work really well. But I didn't want to go into the research just assuming or presuming that, because, as I've said, maybe it's about the right students. I don't know who the right students are. And one of the comments I got back when I was discussing was that, most of the people that signed up are already motivated. So how do I get students who are not that motivated signed up to a thing like this? I do think that the topic is the key. This is about learning to be an independent learner, and kind of a little bit about learning to learn. But maybe, we could run a course like this in game design or in film editing, and you'd get lots of students who are not normally that motivated might sign up for that kind of event. So I think content is an important part of it. What I did hope was, and what I did think was actually successful, was that those that did get engaged with it would really kind of enjoy it and be able to take something away from it that they perhaps didn't expect. And from the feedback from those that did complete the course, there was, for most of them, there was something that they kind of weren't expecting, and they learned about themselves in the process. And that to me is really powerful, because I think like the best learning is where you don't just learn a skill or a topic, but you learn something about yourself as a learner. And it came kind of through loud and clear in the final survey that had kind of happened. So that met my expectations, and I was pleased about that.
Okay. Now, what went right and what went wrong, for instance? If you have any particular week about which you would say that one was great, successful, I'm really pleased with what I got. And if you had to pick one week, which one would that be? And also the one that you were kind of disappointed about. And,
okay. I thought week 2 was the most successful, which was the first real collaboration doing the research project. I think it was partly the most successful because most of the people that had signed up initially were still on board at that stage, so the groups were able to work reasonably well. Everybody seemed to get into it, and there was a real enthusiasm from almost everybody at the beginning of the course, so there was a real buzz. It was the most well-attended Twitter discussion that week, which I think shows something, and the work that was produced at the end of the week was really, really good, almost across the board. Very, very much like instant feedback as well that came from about how they like Connect. It was kind of scary at first to be in a document and have to edit it at the same time as other people. but lots of them kind of got past that towards the end of the week and did start editing and started changing things, and that everybody came away with a document produced. So that kind of, although it wasn't a perfect process, I kind of didn't expect it to be, and I kind of knew some of the things that would happen, and I kind of wanted them to happen, but it was really nice to see that evolution take place. So that was really successful. I think least successful would be week 4, which was the analytical assignment. I mean, several things I think went wrong there. I think that the writing of the assignment needed to be better explained. It's a particular type of writing, and it's not an easy form of writing. So I kind of explained more how to do the reading, but not really how to go about writing it up. So that's something that I plan to rectify for the next one. I think that given the time frame of only having a week for each of the skills, it would be better as a paired activity. So I'm going to pair people up next time round, just so they can share some of the load and have at least one person to discuss it with. I'd like them all to discuss it and share ideas, but at least they will have one person to discuss the article with, because the articles were quite heavy and academic. And that's a tough one, and that's been a quandary for me throughout the entire course, is that although I was very happy to open the course up to 14-year-olds, it was originally like to be pitched to 16 to 18-year-olds, and so it was hard pitching all the content to the right level, and I think I got it slightly wrong that week, that one of those articles in particular was very tough, and I think that put one or two participants off. In the process, they just felt they couldn't do it, and so they just didn't do it. Therefore, so that week was a tough week, and it was the first point at which, leading into the next week, where I just felt like I was really struggling with my role then within the course, because I went from being just kind of guide and facilitator, encouraging, to emailing people and saying, "Have you done this? Have you done that? Why are you not doing it?" and things like that. I was back in teacher mode really, and that was kind of the opposite of my intention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that was sort of my next question. Because my next question was partially, totally happy or unhappy, but I'll skip that because you already elaborated about it. So CMOOC or XMOOC? That's a big question.
I think it's in complete honesty, I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I can't really.
To be honest with you, sorry for interrupting you, because the MOOC before this one, the one that I attended pretended itself to be a CMOOC, and when you said that yours was also a CMOOC, I could tell a difference, because you actually intervened way more than those guys intervened, and that's another question. Might be coming from different reasons, but back to what I was asking. So XMOOC or CMOOC in your opinion? It probably started as a CMOOC, and as time passed, it transformed itself into XMOOC.
A little bit. It became a little bit like I did feel it. Like in week 4 and week 5. It felt like a little bit of a chore at times, and it wasn't supposed to be. And I felt that I was becoming more of a deliverer and imparter of information, and that's not what I wanted it to be. It was very much fully intended, as I said in the first presentation and on the about page. This is built on connectivist principles. It was just the collaboration just wasn't coming. It wasn't fostered very well. And I think, in my personal reflections, I'm as I said earlier, I'm much as to blame for that as anybody else. But I think that's what I'm going to strive for next time round. I don't think that it ever hit the XMOOC level where it was like, learn this, go away, and then get this. Because there were some people, so behind the scenes, there were some people I didn't issue badges to, for example. They wrote a blog post, but they hadn't really got involved in the assignment. So they hadn't really done the work. So in that sense, I wasn't just awarding things because they showed up. It wasn't like just do the bare minimum and then you get something out of it. So there was some element of you kind of got to get involved and work. But did it meet that connectivist model of growth that you see? So in Mook Mook, we did things like, they set as an assignment for the day, but three of us went off and interpreted it in our own way and did our own kind of mini project with it and presenting that back. And that element of freedom to kind of do with it what you want and to connect with others and take things in directions, that certainly didn't happen or occur. And I would have liked it to have done. And that's something that I'm still reflecting on at the moment, trying to unpick why that didn't happen. I do think a part of it has got to do with the age of the participants, and that the model of learning in itself is still very new to them. So I've been learning online since before I was a teacher. So that's 12 or 13 years now I've been learning using the web. They, in a particular model, using it in a way that I have to kind of go away and do something and learn things and talk to people. For a lot of them, this kind of going into like their spheres, like Twitter is very much their environment, and then using it as a space to learn, I think they found that difficult. They found it at times tough to get into that aspect of it and to want to talk and communicate and see the value in that. So the other thing that I'm going to try and do next week in the kickoff sessions for the second version is just share some material about the value of commenting and collaborating, and try and get that value across, that it's really useful, that it can help move you forward, and try and put it more at the forefront of the course, so that comes out of it. But yeah, so I think I ended up somewhere in the middle, where it was XMOOC-like in the sense that it was a lot about delivery. It became a lot about delivery of content and chasing people up and things like that, but it never hit the state level where it was just, essentially a bunch of videos, go and do some stuff and then submit like a test. So, and that was important to me, just to kind of backtrack about when you asked me about how I built it. At no point did I ever consider, because I already rejected it in my mind, like multiple choice quizzes and really easy to kind of submit tests. I wanted everything to have some sort of creative writing element to it, and real thought process going into what they were producing, and that responses could be different and varied from different people because they're different ages, different backgrounds, different interests. So that was another consideration when I was putting the course together.
Can I ask you something? How many people attended? Actually, how many people signed up?
Signed up 20.
20, and you ended with how many?
9.
Okay. That's probably something that could also be one part of the explanation, because, and I was talking about it the last time with a friend of mine. She actually was, and that's the what I blogged about last time actually. She was kind of surprised how she committed as much as she did, and my explanation was that part of it could be that we had about 1,300 people.
Mm-hmm.
But to tell you the truth, I haven't seen the production of more than 30 persons. I think it has to do with number. Mm-hmm. And I said, basically, you're an average person. I don't want to insult you, but you're an average person. You don't have an IQ of a genius or any particular talent. It's just so happened that at some point you said, I'm confused. So if I want to get more than what I get, mm-hmm. Attending this CMOOC that I don't get much about, I have to do more than what is expected out of me. And obviously those guys, because they don't ask me much, they just show me something. They just say, well, what you should do is this, we expect this, and that. But in terms of involvement, they didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. I think it has to do with the fact that out of, it works like a pyramid. The basis doesn't do much, probably collect all the informations, watches, but it's very passive. Maybe at a higher level, more people are committed doing producing something. And at the very top, you have a very small portion of people who actually are not the one conducting the MOOC, but the one attending it. But as the CMOOC tends to make the attendees teach themselves,
Yeah.
they get it. They understand that because it's for them to learn, they have to sort of take another peer, and along with that person or along with others, they um, uh, find the material, discuss about it, synthesize, and maybe the one conducting the MOOC could actually become, references. They're not teaching because
Mhm.
the material is out there. They
Yeah.
just they just set the beat, the tempo, and at some point, if anything goes the wrong way, like for instance, if you had to learn about nuclear energy, maybe you could actually stuff yourself with materials, but not get it all that well.
Mhm.
Those guys would actually be ready to step in, and it would be for them to actually uh, teach the right way, the rope,
Mhm.
not provide the material, but and I think it has to do with the numbers.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think.
I think that like it's hard. It's something that will be like a very important part of my write up is that because I'm trying to investigate really essentially will this type of course work in a high school environment, and motivation is a massive factor, and getting enough people signed up because to meet the connect you're so right, to meet the connective model effectively you need more people than you think you need, in the sense that if there is some dropout, it's not to the extent that it limits the collaboration that can happen. So when I did, I had the same experience when I did Moot Moot. There were not necessarily always the same people, but there were so many people involved. There was always someone to go and work with and to investigate something with, find out. You didn't have to look far to find somebody who wanted to do something because so many people were signed up at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, uh, you said you used the term mookish at sometimes at the beginning. So it seems to me that you draw the line between what is a MOOC, what is not, and what is MOOCish, and what is definitely not. So
I
what
think
would be?
I have problems with the definition itself. I don't really. I think the acronym has become like it's been taken over by Udacity and people like that, and it's come to mean something else than what it originally meant.
They're going to copyright it. You can count on them.
Yeah, and the mass, and I feel a bit false calling this a MOOC in the sense that it's not massive.
Yeah.
So then, me and Pat Parslow, who's a friend online, we had a bit of a kind of funny conversation about whether it was a Luke, so it's a little open online course, or things like that.
Why not?
So,
Why
yeah,
not? You would be the one using it.
yeah.
You,
It's
you,
certainly an ook. I think
uh,
it meets my intentions, which is I wanted it to be open.
yeah.
Open for two reasons. One, I believe in open education. I think that it should be open for all. I'm kind of very. If we had a right wing and a left wing spectrum, I'm right on the far end of the left wing, hanging off the end by my like tiptoes. Um, so I think education should be free and it should be open and it's out there and it should be transparent as well. Um, but I also wanted to be open in the sense that it's my research project, and as a good researcher, I didn't want to hide anything. So my whole entire MA, I've blogged the whole process and put it and posted my assignments on my blog, and so people have been able to see it. But it's kept me honest all the way through the process. Um, it's certainly online, obviously. I mean, that kind of speaks for itself. And it is really a course. One of my biggest questions when I came away from doing Mook Mook was, is this a course or not? And I think that it is. And I think that that's a hard thing to get away from. I learn a lot on Twitter from connecting and sharing tools, but that's not really a course. It's something I choose to just go and do, and there's no defined curriculum. But even within MOOC, which was about learning about MOOCs, there was a curriculum. There was this today we're going to focus on kind of this idea, and tomorrow we're going to focus on this. So there was, to an extent, someone pulling the strings at the top. Someone has kind of predefined at least concepts, at the very least, that we might go away and investigate. And like ETMOOC is following, I don't know if you've seen that one, but that was following a very similar kind of idea. Lots of online lectures, but each week has a topic. There's not a lot of resources provided, just a few to get you started, and then you go away and investigate and share yourself. But there is at least somebody saying, well, this week's about this, this week's about this. So it is a kind of a course, and some of it's been predefined kind of in advance, but it's not massive in any shape or form. And I guess my other issue with the acronym is I haven't decided yet, and this is something I'm still trying to figure out, so I don't have a conclusive answer, but how far is this removed from what I've already been doing? So I have loads of material courses online that are there for students to use. I don't know, you couldn't learn the whole topic from just the Moodle course, but it's an integral part of what I deliver. So I've got a slight question mark on, is this just an online course, or is it picking up those connectivist open principles, and how far has it removed itself from what I've been doing before? And I've still got a question mark really over that. I have to see. I'll decide that once I see how the second version kind of goes, and if it meets more of my expectations and meets more of the principles that I'd originally intended for the first one.
So you did it on your own. Is that on purpose, or just because you couldn't find anybody to take the risk with you, or that anybody else was interested in doing it?
I didn't think about doing it that way. I guess part of my I suffer a little from OCD and like being in control, and because it's my master's, I wanted just to have that kind of ownership and control over it. I do think now, like having gone through the first 6 weeks and kind of running it and doing that on top of my day job, it's been insane is the only word that kind of describes the amount of extra work that I've had to do. So I guess in retrospect, if I could have cajoled somebody into like doing it with me, that might have been a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But certainly in terms of my research, it's nice to it's just me, and it's kind of I have full control then over what happens or doesn't happen, if you see what I mean, and in terms of like collecting the data and analysing it. So I guess it was more just born out of the fact that, you know, there's only a few of us who are doing the MA, and we're all doing completely different projects. I am very much like the only one really who's kind of like a ed tech person in the group, so there wasn't really a natural person to go, do you want to come and do the same project with me? They've all gone off on different kind of directions, more down things like more traditional modes of assessment for learning, or student interaction or motivation, things like that.
You mentioned Moodle. Why didn't you try that one as a platform upon which everybody else would be gathered, and that would be the basis for your material?
Partly to make this different to kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis, and partly inspired by things like DS106, and also my own experiences of being an online blogger, and that idea of the connected web, and that we can, you know, work in our own spaces, and then through commenting through Twitter we can connect those spaces up. But I'm not convinced of, even though I'm still using Moodle to an extent, I use it less and less. Like this year, it's become, when I first started using it, I was very much into like the forums and the active use of it as an environment to learn in. But I've just come to like different tools better. I use Warwisher a lot to collect thoughts and ideas. I use Google Docs to collaborate and get my students to write. We They all my A level students keep their own blog and reflect on their learning and things like that, and I comment directly in those spaces. So just over time, I've become almost disconnected from Moodle to an extent. I've just found the platform has always been a little bit clunky and doesn't necessarily just fit my needs easily enough. So I've come to like more the idea of separate tools and then using like a blog as a space to kind of draw them and connect them together.
Um, I used at some point. I used it. It didn't work out, and I think it wouldn't have worked out anyway. Had I found sooner that it was actually for me to decide that I had to share the mind map. Um, it's something that I got acquainted with during the MOOC, the first MOOC that I participated in. You didn't say anything about alternative way of taking notes, for instance. Mind map is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Google Doc is basically a blank sheet.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help you in the process of gathering information, and after that sorting them out, and then if you have to write up something that you were keen on getting, then at least you would have the ideas just for you to the attendee to connect the words, connect the concepts
Yeah.
one after the other. You didn't say anything about alternative way of taking notes. Why
No,
that?
I think you're right. I think you raise a really kind of important point, and I think that going forward into the next one, I'm going to include some suggestions of tools that they might want to use to do that. Certainly, mind map tools would be good, and something as free and open as something like Warwisher, where it doesn't have the mind map string, but lots of people can add ideas, and you can kind of group them into bunches, so to connect thoughts. So yeah, certainly what I wasn't going to like prescriptively, because one of the things that I also thought that I really want to try and foster is that I do want to take that step back in this one. So I'm going to like for each week I'm going to suggest a couple of tools and leave it up to the groups to kind of just pick what they want to use and present their work back through.
Okay. How about the badging experience? You were not too happy about that. I was kind of surprised about the way they were delivered. It seemed to me that you were the one, rating. How about having people deciding who deserved the
Yeah,
badge?
I mean
Well, it seemed to me that it was a sort of a top-down decision,
yeah.
and very much against what the CMOOC is supposed to be.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I want to try it. It's the one that I'm most scared of, I think, in doing because I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced fully by peer assessment in an online environment yet about how well it can be done, particularly with 14 to 18-year-olds.
Uh,
I think a group of adults who are well versed in how badges work to begin with, one, and then two, are used to kind of like talking and discussing in a very polite manner. That form of peer assessment and awarding of badges could work. Within the space, to do it well in the space of 6 weeks and get them doing it properly, I'm not quite sure how well it would work and whether.
it could transform itself easily into a sort of a weakest link contest, I think.
Yes. Yeah,
You
that would
don't
be
want
my
that.
main concern, and that might then cause further. So one of my hopes is that in the second run there's less dropout. Would it unintentionally cause one or two students to drop out if they felt that they, had done work but they weren't awarded the badge by their peers, and would it create any kind of animosity? But I think as a principal idea, I think peer assessment should be able to happen like this, and the peer awarding of badges should be able to happen.
Because
Maybe if a course was a bit longer and there was time to kind of do actual work on how to peer assess, how to comment on each other's work in a bit more detail and depth, you might reach a point where you felt confident enough to say, okay, for the next few weeks, you guys are going to award the badges now that we feel that you're competent
yeah,
at peer assessing each other's work.
because that's definitely an element that was lacking in in the previous MOOC, in my previous
Hmm.
MOOC. And I think it has something has to be done about that, because that lady friend that I talked to the other day, she was said, well, uh, I have to go beyond that. I have to put that in the back, because at the moment I'm looking for another job and I'm not getting any credit having done that. Was that, well, part of it was wrong, because there were some articles published every now and then about it, because it was the first in French. And so actually I was sort of consoling her and said, well, you have at least something to not brag about, but at least say, well, I was instrumental in making this book successful. But
Hmm.
that's not enough. We all know that. And that's the reason, well, not part of the reason why I intended yours was the badging process. Definitely, there must be something done about giving people credentials uh, upon which they can say, well, this is what I got having attended this.
Hmm.
Maybe in the future we won't need those diplomas or baccalaureates or whatever.
Yeah.
Right now we do still. We're progressing to, well, the conclusion,
Okay.
and it's going to be very simple. So what next? I think we know pretty much that. Uh, Yes. What does he plan to? What do you plan to do following this MOOC? I think we understood that there was a second one coming that would conclude um, uh, your, your assessment, right? After which you would have to.
It will conclude my data collection,
Yeah.
which I'll write up for my MA. It is my intention that this will probably be the last run for this academic year. By the time it finishes, we'll have come for our school term. We'll be right into the point where we start revision, and then we have exams in May. So I don't think it would be a good time to run it
Yeah.
while that process is going on. But it certainly is. It's been successful enough this time, and providing that the next one is more successful, that I think I will continue to offer it as a course next year
Uh-huh.
in its own right, not connected with my MA in any shape or form, but just continue to refine it a bit further
Yeah.
and continue to offer it for A level, particularly for A level students, to help them develop and give them something extra that they can discuss on their CVs. Hopefully, I can explore and refine and make this badging process work better
Mhm.
and develop a model of there, because it's certainly an area of interest for me, and it's a nice platform from in which to do it. So that will continue. But in terms of like this, like kind of little unit for me, yeah, it will bring a conclusion to that data collection process. I'll start my comparison of the two versions of the course and start to formulate my conclusions and
Yeah.
things, and then be writing up my dissertation.
Same population though. Teenagers.
Yeah. So
Okay.
same, aiming at a similar group. I've gone this time, apart from yourself and Kathy, and one other person who signed up initially. The rest of the participants were all students, and they were all from my own school. Whereas in this next one, I've already got about 9 or 10 students signed up from different schools in the local area. So just because I know teachers in the area via Twitter, they've encouraged some of their students to they've shown them what it's about,
Okay.
sign up. So that's going to be another facet to this one where I'm going to be working with people that are not students I know in my own school. So we'll see how that goes.
It could actually be harder for you to get anything out of that, because unlike those ones, they won't see you every morning
Yeah,
or every day for that matter. So you won't have the possibility to say, "Well, you owe me something, man."
yeah. And I think that's a good thing actually, because that kind of is what I was that you referenced and talked about that post that I put out there about my role. Like I want to step back, so for some of them I'm going to be forced to kind of step back whether I like it or not. I don't have the same level of control
Mhm.
there, so that's a good thing. I think that's all to the good. That's kind of meets more kind of what I was intending the course to be. Whether it works or not is all up in the air at the moment, but at least I will not be able to kind of intervene as much, and so they'll have to get on and either do it or they won't do it. That's for me to kind of deal with. As a team, it's hard because it's all very well that I sometimes talk about being kind of the teacher who's hands off, and I am a lot of the times. I try to be, but sometimes you can't get the teacher out of you.
Yeah,
It's there all the time, even in the cinema, and people are making noise.
so I understand that you were pretty booked up at the moment, so you didn't have any chance to follow any other MOOC, right?
No, I wanted to. I know several of the people that are involved in ETMOOC. I really wanted to be involved, but it happened to be running at exactly the same time that I'm running my one, and I just can't do both. And because I've already started writing up my dissertation. I've written my rationale. I've written up my methodology, so that's going on. I'm teaching my full timetable, and I want to have a bit of a life and spend some time with my wife as well.
Yeah.
So, fitting it all in at the moment has been kind of crazy. So I would like to have done it because, like last week, for example, was all about open education. What I have been doing is I signed up so at least I would get the emails and the resources, because some of that's been helpful for my MA, and I've been keeping up with some of the reading, but actually getting in there and participating and making stuff, it just hasn't happened, unfortunately.
Okay, final question for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just sorry that Kathy hasn't showed up, and I hope she won't in about 4 minutes, because otherwise she would have misunderstood that it was 8:30 for me, 7:30 for you, and something 30 for her. So the last question is going to be simple, actually. If it is, what question, if any, would you have liked to be asked, and what would your question have been then? I'm pretty sure that in anticipation of this session, you probably thought of different scenarios, and I probably didn't fail to ask something that you wanted to, or you were prepared for. Let's put it that way. And
I think you've covered actually most things that I would ask myself. The only thing that I find myself asking myself at the moment really is, why on earth did I start this in the first place?
You're not regretting it, are
you? Why did I not just pick so one of my colleagues is doing the data collection for her study involved a few worksheets across a few lessons with one class of students, and she collected the data in a few weeks with ease on paper, and she's analyzing it already. And I'm like, really? That would have been a really good idea. It wouldn't have been as interesting to me, but it would have been really manageable. I guess I have a bigger question. My bigger part of this all is where do I see education going? And the part of this, before I even got to the stage of thinking about offering a course like this, my very, very first version of my dissertation question was about what is the future of education in an online world.
Yeah.
And is this the right... So I've got questions for myself that I'm trying to kind of unpack, and the course is a part of that. But it's a question that I ask people I speak to at the pub and online. Is this... what we're doing, and what a particular group of us who are connected on Twitter and interested in educational technology, is this the right model for educational futures? Yeah. Is this kind of what we think is right, and are we going in the right direction? Have we got it all wrong? So there are bigger questions that I associate with these types of courses and this model of learning, and how well it can work for all students of different ages, different abilities, different preferences and interests, and I wouldn't want to find a one-size-fits-all solution. I don't believe in that. But as we do move, more and more into a world where we've got, bring the idea of bring your own device and smartphones, and I'm certainly open to those things being in my classroom. Some teachers aren't. But is this what the future is, and is it the right future? Or should we be considering different models and different approaches, and what might those models and approaches be? And
Yeah. Okay. Um, Maybe it could actually. It is very possible that my question was the last question, because you said something that made me think of something else. That one of the persons who conducted our MOOC, she said that there was a time when there was no McDonald's or fast food
mm-hmm.
restaurants, and we were all happy with our regional cuisine
Yeah.
and the way we were cooking things. And what McDonald's actually made was it was giving the possibility for everybody to eat a decent meal, even though it was a low um, quality way of
Mm-hmm.
producing it. At least it was affordable for everybody. You don't believe in that, obviously. You said so yourself. Still, though, there are some, and she's not the only one saying that. Sugata Mitra
You try?
was
Mm-hmm.
sort of going in that direction, although it was not really um, 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 advertising about any sort of prepackaged education. At least he was saying the good thing about that, the good aspect about that, it's accessible to more people than the current education allows people to attend.
Yeah,
Uh,
that is the bit of Mitra's work that I think is very important. Is the idea of opening education up to people, and that if you provide the means, they will come and they will learn. And I think that I have I have questions about other aspects of his research, and I've read most of it. Um, that very much tied in with my independent learning module. Was something I specifically looked at was his work. Um, but the bit that I really think is valuable, not for all teachers in the classroom, is that you have to ask yourself. I ask myself every day, could they have learned that without me? And if they could, then what the hell was I doing?
exactly.
Because really, I should be there. What I should be providing is more beyond what they can get from the internet. That learning in the classroom is not about necessarily facts and information. The facts and information is what we use, but we learn skills and develop discussions and ideas and concepts and have arguments and hypothesize. And that to me is learning. That's kind of where I'm coming from. And that's kind of, I think, where part of what Mitra is kind of advocating is that idea that the content is out there. Everybody should have access to it. And I think schools have got to get on to the idea, and teachers are getting the idea that the content is out there and there's nothing you can do about it. So what are you going to do with it, and how are you going to make learning in your classroom meaningful, if classrooms are what we're still going to have? As some people clearly still think that. I mean, our education secretary is very much about the classroom and the facts. And yeah, so classrooms are going to be there for a while if he gets his way, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you very much for
Thank
this
you.
1 hour. I don't think we have to say more about what your MOOC was about. Thank you very much, actually, for creating it, conducting it, and being present as much as you have been. And best of luck for our next session, and best of luck
Thank you.
for your MA. And I will probably see you online because I follow you on Google Plus. And
Absolutely. And just thank you. I think this was a really nice thing to do. I hadn't kind of thought about doing this way, but I think it was really useful because in any conversation, it just helps me clarify my
mhm.
thinking even further. So just thank you for suggesting it. It's really good. And thanks for participating. It's been really nice to have one or two other adults, one or two other teachers kind of involved, coming along for the ride and getting different feedback to that from like the students themselves, kind of giving their feedback, because it's a different perspective, and that's been really, really useful. So thank you for that. It's really great. And I'll see you online at some point soon.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop the broadcasting at the moment.
Okay.
I think we had enough material, and I will edit it just a bit. Not
Okay.
probably cut too much of the end because this is it, and
Yeah.
we'll probably take out the first 10 minutes during which we were
Okay.
introducing one another. All right? Okay. Thank
Lovely.
you very
Thank
much.
you. You
Bye.
have a good evening. I'll
Likewise.
speak to you
Thank you.
soon. Okay. Bye bye.